my God. Hi, everybody. This is so like Charlie Rose.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, thanks for coming. I really thought nobody would come. Should we talk about my low self-esteem first?
Well, I was thinking we could get that in a little bit. I want to start with the sketch first. Okay.
Sure.
Hi, Jessi.
Hi.
How many times have you seen that?
Well, I was in the editing room while we were putting it together, so I would say about 5,000 times at varying lengths.
So there's
and with varying fart sounds and burp sounds.
Uh-huh.
I hope everyone likes what we landed on. Cool.
There's an origin story behind that sketch.
Well, that sketch really came out of a lot of the stuff, almost everything I would say that we wrote on the show kind of comes from like either things happening in our real life or just things that come up in the room. And we're all like scumbags, so we would have like a lot of scumbag gossip magazines lying around all the time. And yeah, we were just looking at, I guess, Us Weekly or the ones that are like even worse than that one. And we were kind of just marveling at how like somebody, you know, there's like someone who's the ingenue, who's like hotsy-totsy in the middle of the magazine, and then someone who was the ingenue like 10 years ago is now on the cover of OK as like horrifying butt, you know, or someone melted just because they aged. And so we started kind of just talking about like what is the point at which you go from being the ingenue in the middle of the magazine to being the horror show caught at the beach in a bathing suit, God forbid. And yeah, I think I just kind of started talking about like, what if there's this Malcolm Gladwellian tipping point that's really specific, and then the phrase "last fuckable day" was spoken, and we were like, all right, that's a thing. Yeah, that was how that kind of happened.
Well, I was sort of fishing around. I thought there was a more closer to home story with you. Am I getting too close? There was some talk about maybe you being in a show.
Oh, is this the incident with the casting director? Oh. Natalie Portman's story. That one?
What?
Wait, which one? I didn't know which one we were talking about.
Wait, just whisper it again.
Wait, where someone told me they wanted to cast me as something? Oh, that one. Oh, yeah, that, I guess that's, that also happened. Years ago, years ago, but not that many years ago, I was at a party. It was like an industry party that I didn't want to go to. I don't want to go to any of them, but I did a stand-up show, and then I was told afterwards that part of the stand-up show was we had to go to this thing. Anyway, this is already going terribly. Anyway, I was at this thing, and this woman came up to me, and she was kind of drunk, it seemed like, and she was like, "I love you. I'm such a fan." And I was like, "What?" And she is a casting director for a major network that rhymes with Cox. And I was living in New York at the time, and she was like, "You have to move to LA. You gotta move there." And I was like, "Why?" She's like, "'Cause I want to put you in one of my shows." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I got like a little excited, but she was pretty drunk. So I said, "Well, what would you cast me as?" And she like took a step back, and she looked me up and down, and she said, "You could play Natalie Portman's mom." And I'm 6 years older than Natalie Portman. Yeah, that was a real awakening. Sorry, I didn't know that was the story.
No. I mean, I think you would have known it,
yeah,
by
that
the
also
way.
happened to me.
Well, I want to ask, I mean, you're someone who's not just been occasionally dissed by the fuckability industrial complex, but you...
Ooh, Chris. The FIC.
The FIC.
Yeah.
But you're sort of part of it. I mean, even a subversive part, but you are part of entertainment. And
The
so,
fuckability industrial complex.
well, you work in television, and so I'm wondering, from that vantage point,
Sure.
have you seen? I don't know. What's the report from the inside? Like, have things shifted at all on your watch? Like, do sketches like that, or our slowly growing consciousness about double standards, have those things changed? Like, moved the needle at all?
I'm just reeling from the fuckability industrial complex. I mean, the report from the inside, I think it's more like it's better to gauge it from the outside. And I watch some TV. I mean, I think it seems like in the last 5 years or even less, there has been, I think now that there are a lot more shows that are created by women, and particularly created by women who are writing for themselves, that things have gotten better in TV. I think in movies, it's still pretty bad. I'm not really on the inside of movies at all, but from the outside of them,
Right.
it still seems pretty horrendous. But yeah, I think the needle is moving a little bit, but I definitely, I've definitely still been witness to like some pretty shitty comments.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, just like in terms of like hearing the way people talk about casting decisions. Yeah, agism is insane, and I think it's still pretty crazy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because, like, this sketch and then other ones that became such a phenomenon. I don't know. It seems possible, at least from my naive vantage point, to feel like, oh, maybe people are finally like waking up. But I don't know. Maybe.
I think hopefully the actual gatekeepers of TV are able to kind of bear witness to the popularity of entertainment that doesn't necessarily have to feature someone who's like a size -8 and what have you. But yeah, I think women having more creative control is the path. And hopefully, yeah, more men also trying to get a little more woke, if I can say that here.
We have that word here.
Do you have that here?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad the word I started spread here.
Can we back up a bit? How did you become the person you are now? When I
Chris and I went to college together. We went to Vassar College. What was your haircut, Chris, in college?
I don't know, something handsome.
Do you remember your freshman year haircut?
This is not really the point of this discussion. I don't think that's
It was
why
like a
people
page boy, right?
You're a page boy. I want to talk about.
I'm just saying, when we're talking about how we became the people we are today, it's interesting to revisit the past.
Moving along. So like 20 years ago, well, I don't know. I mean, you were just like a regular person. You had a temp job after college. I think the reason where as did I. Where I'm going with this is I think people are curious how you go from
Pure garbage
from pure garbage
to even less pure garbage.
Exactly. Yeah. No, what's the path to becoming a TV writer and producer? And P.S., what is a TV producer? I keep saying that, but I don't really know what that means.
Nobody knows. Producer, yeah. I still don't totally know. I know a little bit. Producer is a very amorphous title. Didn't we also use the same temp company in New York? Did you go to Force One?
Yes.
That's the way. Anyone else? Force one? Grania, are you here? Yeah! Grania also went to Force One. Sounds like a technical college. I'll get to Force. I think everyone in TV has like a different path, but my path was a little random. I was an art history major in college. You probably remember. Yeah, thanks. Art. The history of art. Right. It's a really long history. I was a very shy kid, but I was always very interested in comedy. But I'm 41. I think things are very different now. There was none of this YouTube that the kids like. It just didn't seem. I think now, if you were a young person now, it seems much more viable. Like the idea of a career as a TV writer, and you can make things and put them on the internet and people see them. But I didn't know what I was doing after college. I ended up, I was pretty clueless about what to do, and so I went to this temp agency called Force One. I don't know if you went for the same reason I did.
I would hope so.
Well, they didn't make you take a typing test. It was the only temp agency that didn't make you take a test.
Oh, you couldn't type?
No, I still can't type.
Oh.
I type with 4 fingers.
Oh. It's eccentric of you.
It's a weakness. But anyways, but their specialty was placing people at entertainment companies. And I watched a lot of Comedy Central, and I said I was interested in working there, and they placed me there. And I ended up in the development department. I didn't know what that was, but that was kind of a lucky thing, because that's where shows are pitched and developed and greenlit. And so I got to read a lot of scripts and kind of see that process. And then at the same time, I started doing stand-up comedy, which was something I'd always wanted to do. I started relatively late. I was 26 the first time I did stand-up, and a lot of people start in their teens. And so between those two things, I was at Comedy Central as a development person for 7 years, and then I ultimately realized I kind of knew I didn't want my boss's job, and I knew I wanted to kind of be more just on the purely creative side. I was kind of like a hiding shadow artist type person before. And then a show got picked up by Comedy Central called The Showbiz Show with David Spade. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. And I went to go write for that. And that was my first TV writing job.
And you were already doing stand-up at that point?
I'd been doing stand-up for a few years when I finally left. And I also, I did like talking head stuff on the show Best Week Ever on VH1. And a lot of other like spin-offs where it would be like a half hour of just comedians telling pretty bad jokes about like Britney Spears' vagina or whatever happened that week. Remember when her vagina would happen to us every week?
Oh yeah, it's a nice memory. I don't think we ever lived in the same city when you were doing stand-up, or we did, and I just didn't go. But do you remember what your first gig?
My first
gig was? Is that
my
what you say?
gig, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't really count as a gig if it's an open mic that you pay to be in. But I remember that. I did an open mic on the Lower East Side of New York City, where it was not even really just a comedy open mic. It was like an open mic for whatever. And there was a lot of rough stuff happening. And so I was really nervous about it, but you would pay $3, and you would, it was run by this woman named Reverend Jen, and she would wear elf ears. And she would set an egg timer for 5 minutes, and then you would do your 5 minutes. And she was kind of like a hippie, and she would say that everyone had to give you a 10 at the end of your performance. no one was doing anything that was a 10, including very much myself. That was my first gig.
What was the first thing you said at that gig? Do you remember? I mean, was it a joke or a story or?
I remember one joke that was, and I had typed everything out word for word because I didn't want to miss a beat of how great it all was. I think one of the jokes I told that night was, you know, when you're on the subway and it honks sometimes, what is there, a deer? If you're waiting for more, there isn't. I wrote that and I was like, that joke's done. On to the next one.
I'm sorry, I missed that. That sounds like it was funny.
We definitely lived in the same city, Chris. Never saw you at a show. It's cool though.
It's funny that you typed it up word for word because
Not mad.
I was visiting you a couple years ago in New York, and we were walking around near your apartment near whatever river that is, and then you said, "Oh, I should get going. I have to go do a stand-up thing for Mike Birbiglia's show," right?
I think so.
And I said, "Oh, what are you going to say?" And you said, "Oh, I don't know, but it starts in like 40 minutes." And that was very jarring to me, just as a fellow human being, hearing that someone was going to get up on a stage in front of people,
right?
And she didn't know what she was going to say. I couldn't believe it.
I'm trying to remember if I lied, because there's one. It would depend on what show it was. Because if it was what I opened for him at Brooklyn Academy of Music, and if that was what it was, it couldn't have been that. I don't think I would have hung out with you then. I think I would have been like shitting a brick all day. But no, Mike Birbiglia did a show. He might still do it when he has time, where it's like a very loose.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah. And that's like a thing where I probably had like ideas of things to talk about, but the point of the show is to kind of like go work out stuff. I probably bombed. I mean, your nervousness was correct. I should have prepared more. Yeah.
That's just something you can do now. You can just go up and sort of work stuff out.
No, I can't. I did
okay.
badly.
I see. Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I think as opposed to like the deer joke that I crafted really carefully for weeks. In terms of doing stand-up, and I think I would like to be doing more stand-up now. I haven't in like a year or two, because I had a baby, and there was the last time I did stand-up, I was pregnant, and I was like 7 months pregnant, and I was like, I'm gonna prove I can do this. And then I got on stage, and I was like, what is this feeling? Oh, I'm having trouble breathing in and out. So I took a break. But at the peak of like feeling comfortable doing stand-up, like my process became like I would have an idea, and I would write a little bit about like the idea, and then a lot of what helps you figure out how like what the joke is ultimately going to be is going on stage and not knowing exactly what you're going to say. And that's kind of the magic and the fun of it. A lot of the time is you say stuff, and the stuff you think is going to be great about it maybe doesn't work, and then you say something that wasn't meant to be funny, or you don't think is the kernel of it, but that's the kernel of it, and people laugh.
I feel like I'm always hearing about comics having this weird superpower where they can read a room. They can read like these little emotional microcurrents in a room, and they can know that this joke was funny in this way, but not quite this way, and then they can sort of tweak it accordingly. Is that really a skill that you have, and does it apply outside of comedy situations?
What was the word you used? Micro what?
I don't know.
Currents?
Yeah, emotional microcurrents.
Emotional microcurrents. Like what I'm feeling, like the emotional microcurrent right now of like
This
me
is macro.
still just being like, why didn't you come to my shows? when we lived in the same city for years. It's cool though. I think, like to become people who become like great stand-ups, someone like Amy or like Louis C.K. who are performing every single night of the year, multiple times a night. I think people like that are able to just kind of, it's like a language that you develop with being in front of an audience and hearing yourself speak and kind of developing your voice. I think I got to the point where, to me, stand-up, I never kind of did I'm mentioning people who are incredible at it. I never kind of got past stand-up as a hobby, but I used it, I feel like it did help me develop my voice. Like standing on a stage and talking, it did kind of help me realize like what I want to talk about. And it helped me realize that the moments that felt like connecting were the moments where I was being very honest. And sometimes I didn't even realize I'm trying to think of how to articulate this, but like I was never more honest with myself than when I kind of was in front of a group of people and kind of trying to figure out how to connect. And then you're like, oh, this is what I really think.
Do you remember any, I don't know if you're going to remember, but do you have any examples of a time when you were like extra
deer
honest?
Joke. Gosh, I can't think of one now, but maybe one will strike me while we're moving along.
That's okay. I have another question too.
Cool.
What's the difference, since you mentioned Amy, what's the difference between your comedy and hers? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Between my comedy and Amy's comedy. I think the reason we enjoyed working on the show together is that there was like a nice area of overlap in terms of the things we were interested in talking about, some degree of perspective on the world. Amy's become like one of the greatest comedians in the world, and she has a way of making these very personal stories just kind of land with anybody, and I think maybe that like a difference is that, and she, from being in a room with her for years, she works really hard on thinking about how to make things land and connect. And also some of that is just like an innate gift that she has. And I think to some degree maybe my like thought processes go a little weirder and more like sort of subtle and darker. And I don't, not denigrating her style at all, but I think I kind of go on weird loop-de-loops, maybe a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
Loop-de-loops.
Yeah, I know loop-de-loops. You use the phrase work really hard, and I don't believe you, because I always had this feeling like Jessi in her career, like when I pictured what you were doing,
it was not working hard.
It was not working hard. It was like you and a bunch of other funny people sitting around a table, laughing, drinking rosé, and then someone would be like, well, it's 5, we should probably get going.
Yeah.
Is that pretty accurate?
Can I tell you the truth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
On this show, sometimes more beer. No, yes and no.
Uh-huh.
I was waiting for the part where it would be like, no, that's not, but I'm like, oh, actually, yes and no. Inside Amy Schumer is a show where I just feel it's like the best job ever. We only have to do 10 episodes per season, and we would work pretty like short hours, and we are laughing a lot and occasionally drinking. But there's other work going into it and around it. I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious.
You have to pick up the beer on the way.
No, someone else does that.
Oh, someone else.
No, but for my career in general, I mean, I think as a writer, I kind of feel like I'm thinking and working on it in some way all the time. In terms of, and the show, I mean, Amy is, again, is working on her material every single night, various shows a night. Yeah, I kind of feel like there is a piece of being a writer where it never feels like you stop. Like my husband has like a corporate job and comes home and is kind of able to stop, and I have a hard time ever feeling like I can stop thinking about what to work on.
I want to use this moment to pivot a little bit.
I would love to pivot.
When I saw you that time when you were about to go do that stand-up gig,
Yeah.
You mentioned that you had this book contract, and you were a little freaked out about it because you had to write a book. You understood at that point that you had to write a book.
I had to write a book.
Because you had read the contract.
Yeah, I'd signed the contract.
Yeah. And I'm sort of
You don't get the money unless you write the book.
Right.
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 I didn't realize that at first. I was just really excited to get the contract, and then I remembered, the writing of the book.
I think that was just hitting you then.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of mortified that I was reassuring you. Like when I look back, I was like, it's gonna be great. And I'm embarrassed now because this is the book.
That's the book.
Yeah, because it didn't turn out very well.
No.
No, I'm kidding. It turned out wonderful, and I feel silly that I thought to reassure you because you didn't need it. It's a wonderful book.
I did need the reassurance. You're a very reassuring presence.
Oh, well, thank you. But what I want to ask about that period is, what was it like to toggle from TV to book writing?
Toggling from TV to book writing was actually super helpful. The book, I am a very slow writer, and if I have too much open free time, I tend to go down a rabbit hole of anxiety and depression. Remember I told you we should talk about anxiety and depression? And so it took me about 2.5 years to write the book, and I did it kind of while we were working on Inside Amy Schumer, and it spanned, I think, being engaged, getting married, being pregnant, having a baby, having a newborn, and doing a lot of things, and it kind of compressed on a day-to-day basis the amount of time I had to think and spend on it. And so in some ways that's kind of what helped me get it done at all, was that I would only have so many hours a day to work on it, but then it took me 1,000,000 days. But yeah, I find it easier to have multiple projects going, and so when one is making you crazy, you're able to put it down and work on something else.
Right.
I like that better.
Can I ask you to read a little bit from the book?
I will read a little bit from the book.
Thanks.
Sure. Chris didn't tell me that I would have to read a little bit from the book until I got here, and then I didn't know what to read from the book. So
No, you had it right there.
I have it. I know. I was just going to maybe give them a choice.
Okay, you can give them a choice.
But do you want to hear? Well, I was going to read about. Is it okay to? There's a chapter about lingerie. Do you want to hear that? Okay. Or would you rather hear about porn? Turning the page. Turning the page. See, now I'm suddenly like, why did I just do that? Because now this is, okay, all right. So because this is what people want to talk about porn. It's just more fun to talk about porn. This is a chapter called Long Day's Journey into Porn. They say that women don't like porn. I used to think I didn't like porn, but now here I am on my bed, on my stomach, just moments after Mike has left for work, typing 4 X's into my Google search window. I don't know why I gave you guys a choice. They will lead me to a porn site where I will scroll through a series of thumbnails offering a panoply of sexual images from the banal to the genuinely horrifying until I find something I think I can work with. Minutes later, I am done experiencing that feeling every guy friend I've ever discussed this topic with has described, of going from highly revved up to vaguely repulsed with myself, and then stuffing the whole experience into a mental dirty laundry hamper and moving on with my day. I have become someone who masturbates to porn. That is actually only part of the truth, and to be honest, it's the part that I have no problem admitting. After all, we now live in a pornified world where it almost feels like a greater effort not to look at porn than to be staring at it constantly. What bothers me is not that I now have a porn habit, but rather that after almost 3 decades of old-fashioned pornless diddling, I've lost almost all interest in masturbating without it. Which means that looking at porn has somehow rewired a primitive reptilian neural pathway in my brain in such a way that I am now jerking off like a man. How did this happen? Should we toggle to another thread?
I don't know how you toggle away from that. I was going to say, being up here, I feel sort of professionally obliged to exploit the fact that I've known you for years and somehow say something embarrassing about you, but you've sort of covered that on your own.
I've done it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything with the book or with your other comic writing that you sort of cordoned off that was off limits, or is it all fair game?
Off limits to me is like writing anything about my family that I feel like would make anybody genuinely uncomfortable. And even people, like I write some stories about some ex-boyfriends in the book and who I'm not in touch with, and even with that, I don't ever want to be mean, and I never want to write anything where I feel like I couldn't genuinely look the person in the eye and feel like I hadn't ruined someone's life over something, or or be dishonest or try to be cruel. Mm-hmm. Those types of things. I do try to take into account people's feelings.
I was going to ask you about the exes, because the exes do play a part. Did you consult them first, or how has it been after?
No.
No, uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Nor after. No.
Uh-huh.
And I have not heard from them. What's interesting is that, so the book is getting published in the UK, and obviously there's a legal vetting that happens here, in terms of, you have to, a lawyer does go through everything, and there's some, degree of confirmable truth about things, but in the UK, I guess it's a much crazier process. Oh gosh, I wish I had my phone to dig up these emails. But anyway, when the legal vetting happened for the British publication, there was like a series of questions that were sent to me where I had to confirm things that are just not confirmable. And so like the lawyer asked, like, can you confirm that whatever fake name I'd made up, Damon, or whatever name it is in the book, was the worst boyfriend ever? And I'm like, no. I mean, yes, for me. But it was like, is it a fact? I'm like, I guess.
Did you try? Did you list things about Damon?
I wasn't sure how to handle it. I was just like, it's pretty shitty. But I don't know. I haven't been sued.
Wait, really? You haven't heard from any exes, like the cake guy?
The cake guy?
Yeah.
Well, you know the cake guy.
Oh.
Have you heard from the cake guy? Me neither. I did see the cake guy a few months ago, and it didn't come up. But we ran into each other for just a few minutes, and I actually I wasn't expecting to run into him, and I kind of forgot that I had written about the cake guy.
Do you want to share with these people what we're talking about? No. Okay, all right.
No, well, I mean, I'll share whatever. I mean, it's in the book.
It is in the book.
It's in the book.
Uh-huh.
But I'll share whatever.
Well, give just a thumbnail so they can...
The cake guy?
Yeah.
Like what happened with the cake, like why he's being called the cake guy?
Yeah.
The cake guy's not here for sure, right? There's no way the cake guy's here. I had a boyfriend for many years, and we lived together, and then we had like a very bad ending that involved him dating someone that we both worked with, and I moved out, and I had to go into the apartment while he was out of the apartment to collect some things, and I was a real mess, and it had been his birthday, and so as one does when you go into your ex-boyfriend's apartment that you used to be in, you look in the refrigerator and you go through all the drawers. And there were like 6 or 7 birthday cakes in the fridge with like just a little bit out of each one. And I went into this spiral thinking about him and his new girlfriend and how they must have done this cute, like, manic pixie thing of like, let's just get all these cakes for your birthday because we're so in love. And I had a very real moment of thinking about taking all of the cakes and smearing them on the walls in the bed.
You were holding the cakes in your hand.
They were all there, and he wasn't home. So I was like, what if I just smeared all of these cakes all over the bed and the walls as a fuck you? And it was real close. And then I didn't do it. And I regret it to this day. I should have smeared at least one cake, and I didn't. It was probably the right thing to do, but I feel like I still want to do it a little bit.
I don't know the answer to that one.
You're acting like you've never had that exact thing happen to you. Where you want to smear a cake on a wall.
Yeah, no, I guess it happens to all of us.
All right, well.
Since we're talking about exes, maybe we can roll this other clip that I believe you have brought with you.
Is there a clip? Sure.
I want to just have you sort of break it down a little more, how you take life and make it into a bit or a sketch or something, or a piece in a book. Like, break it down in sort of a wonky way. How do you do comedy? Does something funny happen, like an actual thing happens, and then you sort of wrap it around an idea, or do you have an idea first and then you wrap a story around that?
Well, like in that example, so I briefly kind of dated a guy-ish. He doesn't have herpes either. For legal reasons, I will say that, but it doesn't matter. Why did I just say that? Anyway, so there's a chapter in the book called The Cad, and he was like kind of cad, but, and then there was like a herpes scare that kind of happened towards the end of the relationship. And I just remember thinking, and this was like someone I liked, and it was just one of those really embarrassing affairs in which like all of the signs that this person was not as into me and I should have like fled long before. I mean, after the herpes scare, we stayed together another few months. But anyway, or a month. So that happened maybe a couple of years before I wrote this. And I just remember when I thought, like, oh, maybe I have herpes, like he had to go to the doctor and go something like that or whatever. And I was sitting in my room waiting for him to call me, and I was like, oh, God, please don't let me have herpes. Like I had just left a job. I was like, I can't be unemployed and have herpes. I wouldn't have left my job if I had herpes. They're unrelated things. One shouldn't affect the other. And I don't know, and then I think for me, like writing things to me is really like telling the story, and I tend to just remember very strong feelings, and I try to kind of whittle down like what was the like biggest feeling around that, and I just remember just being like, please God, and and then when I brought it up at the table, we kind of just like tossed that idea around. And yeah, for me, it's kind of a lot of times just taking things to the conclusion of like, well, what is that bargaining? And also being aware of how just it felt so dire. And it really wouldn't have been like ultimately that big a deal. And people deal with much bigger health problems. And so, yeah, for me, the process is kind of like playing it out, I guess.
I want to like keep talking about the process. Do you walk around with a notebook or anything like that? And has anything happened recently where you feel like you might have the germ of something?
I do walk around with a notebook. When I don't have the notebook, I feel like, especially when you do stand-up, you kind of just are, part of that is training yourself to just notice everything that is bumping you a little bit, and to kind of try and break down, like, why did that strike me in some way? In terms of recently, I mean, having a baby and constantly feeling like, I mean, it's just so fucking surreal and weird. And we live in a culture where, I mean, I don't know how it is for the dads, but it feels like there's this notion of motherhood as being kind of angelically perfect or whatever, and it's a fucking shit show. So that.
What's the current, what phase of shit show are you at right now?
Well, my son, it is a literal shit show. He's 16 months old. He's amazing. But I mean, a lot of the shit show is actually me, you know? He's just like a toddler, and then I'm the one who's like kind of, you know, figuring out if what I'm feeling minute to minute is what I'm supposed to be feeling. I think it's not. But then I think that's most of how most people feel. Is that how it is for dads?
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
Glad
cool.
we're on the same page.
You are here in San Francisco without your son.
Correct.
Or your husband. How has it been? I want to do like a little hometown question. Like, what do you think of our city, coming from LA, before that New York? Those are cities we have a lot of feelings about.
Let's be clear, I'm from New York. I don't want anybody to think I'm from LA. No
What
offense.
have you done here? Did you do any of the things I told you to do?
I'm gonna do them tomorrow.
Okay.
Today, I went to Hog Island, Oyster Island, and I got wasted at lunch. By myself, very much alone. That's the whole point of not having your husband and your kid with you, is you got like fucked up in daylight on your own.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. I have a lot more questions about that and other things, but I want to make sure we leave time for other people's questions.
I'm sure everyone's got a lot of questions about even just the Hog Island experience.
Maybe just that, yeah. But before we do, I want to make sure, just in case someone doesn't ask this, can you tell us what's up next for you?
Well, I don't totally know. I'm writing a pilot that is based on a book by a really amazing Chicago writer her name is Samantha Irby, and she wrote a book called Meaty, M-E-A-T-Y, that's really incredible, and Abby Jacobson from Broad City is involved in it as well. I know, she's the best. She has a book out too that everybody should buy. And then, I don't know. I think this was a little bit of a busy year, and I'm I kind of want to just let things happen and try to come up with new ideas.
Good. That sounds nice.
It is nice.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I always feel like, maybe it's like the LA of it all. I always feel like when people are like, what's next? Like, there's like a discomfort that can happen sometimes where you're like, do I have enough stuff to say what's coming up next? And I try to really be like, I don't know. I think like sometimes you forget that it's okay to be like, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Nothing.
Yeah.
We talked about that once.
Yeah, we did, because someone came to our college. It was Paul Theroux came when we were kids. And, and he said, this is such great advice. He said, kids, there's always going to be someone, like some uncle or something, who sort of backs you up against a wall at a party and says, what are you doing next? What are you going to do? And you don't have to answer.
You don't have to answer.
Yeah.
Or you can just answer and say, like, literally nothing. Like, and yeah, I think there's something really refreshing about that. Anyways, so, yeah.
Good. That sounds nice.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Jessi. Can we
Thanks, Chris.
talk to other people?
So we will be taking questions. If you want to raise your hand, we'll come to you. First question is on your left.
Hi, I'm really glad I'm here. Really been enjoying everything. My question is, when you decide on a good premise for a sketch, like say an actress's last fuckable day.
Sure.
How do you work from there and then decide how you want to end it or structure it so that there's a good payoff?
That's a good question. Sketch endings are really hard, notoriously. We would have a lot of endings on Inside Amy Schumer where we would not be able to think of an ending, and then we'd say, well, let's just like have a placeholder ending for now, and this is really dumb. We'll change it. And then we would just never change it. Like more often than not. I feel like we I think specifically, Amy was very dedicated to the idea of like everything just feeling kind of very real. So maybe different than other sketch shows, which sometimes try to like top and top and top. Like we would sort of be okay with things just sort of playing out in a very real way. And if it meant something kind of petered out, then that was sort of maybe funny or refreshing in its own way. So probably don't do that. I don't know.
The next question is right up here.
Hi.
Hi. So one of the parts of your book that really stood out to me is when you talked about going to the bar class, and they referred to the butt as a seat. And
yeah, it's
recently,
really gross.
I went to a bar class and I was like, it's
sorry.
not my seat. I know. It's my butt. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, just kind of like the infantilization of women's bodies, but also like how that plays out and how you think about that in terms of what you do, and also if you still go to bar class.
Well, clearly no. If anyone is unfamiliar with bar class, I feel like guys never know what bar class is. But it's like fake ballet, but like just for your ass, essentially. And you stand at a ballet bar and you do about 60,000 little pliés. And the person who had told me about it did tell me that like the friend who told her about it threw up in the middle of class once. It's really unpleasant and like horrifying. It's not fun in any way. There's no joy. And the woman is on like a Madonna headset mic, and they refer to like tucking your seat. Like they call your butt your seat. It's so gross. in terms of the infantilization of women's bodies, I can't. I don't even know what to say. I went 5 times. It did make me look better in those 5 times. And then I faced a real tough decision about whether I could truly keep going or if I would just accept continuing to melt towards my death. And I'm choosing the latter, which is why I ate a loaf of bread at Hog Island and 2 glasses of wine. And I am currently on Weight Watchers because I'm still, I'm many pounds over what I weighed before the baby. And if anyone's ever done it, you count points, and hopefully you have some points, you have a certain number of points left over at the end of the week that would indicate you now are going to like lose some weight. And I am currently at negative 18 points for the week.
The next question is on your left.
Hi. This
Hi.
question's not totally fully formed yet, but
That's fine.
cool. I just wanted to know, you're talking about being shy kind of back in college, and I wanted to know more about whether you think you were kind of drawn to comedy as a way to kind of like puzzle out the human emotions, or whether it was more of like a means for you to work through that shyness, or whether a combination of both.
That was a very formed question. I felt like it was fully formed. I think it was the desire to do stand-up came from a couple of things. I think it was like the Cliff Notes emotional version would be like a desire to connect that was very strong, like a desire to connect with people in ways that I don't think I felt connected totally in my own family growing up. I think the shyness preventing me from connecting with people in other ways, and yet very strongly wanting that connection and feeling like I had stories to tell. And then I kind of forced myself to do it.
The next question's right up here.
Hi.
Hi.
How many men do you have in your writer's room? And
Good pivot.
do you believe that men have trouble writing women's roles? And if so, why?
Love those questions. Especially because I thought it was going to be something else. How many men in the writer's room? Our writer's room is about 50-50, male, female. There's about, I don't know why I can never remember. I would say, including myself and Amy, there's like 9 or 10 of us in the room. Yeah, and we're pretty down the middle, ladies and dudes. Do men have trouble writing women's roles? Well, I think I don't want to make a blanket statement about, because there are obviously men who write women very well. I think what did you call it before? The fuckability industrial complex? I think a lot of the men who succeed in Hollywood, in pop culture, are perhaps not great at writing female roles because, fuck if I know, because they're not listening to women very much, or they don't necessarily like them very much, or they don't surround themselves with women that they are very interested in knowing anything about.
The next question is on your left.
Hi, I have a question about your experience as a writer in casting your sketches. The herpes scare sketch, for instance, Paul Giamatti is so good as God. I'm wondering, when you're writing, are you writing with a particular actor in mind or voice in mind, or is it that you write the sketch and then try out a bunch of different types or styles of actors to fulfill your vision?
Good question. We would sort of do it both ways. I think more often than not, we wrote things without a specific person in mind. Sometimes there would be an actor that we knew was interested in being on the show, especially in the latter seasons. Just quickly, the story about Paul Giamatti, who is so amazing in that, and who I just fucking love him so much. But so I had written that sketch. We didn't know who should play God. We kind of had the sense of like, oh, it would be great to have someone who's kind of against the like Morgan Freeman type of like this, you know, godlike gravitas person. And we started tossing around the idea of Paul Giamatti. But we kind of didn't have any way of getting to him. We're like, that's not gonna happen. But we're like a Paul Giamatti type. And then Amy and her sister were walking through Greenwich Village one day, and they see Paul Giamatti. And as Amy is wont to do, and this was before she was super famous, and it was like the second season of our show, I think. So no one had still really seen it. She kind of just went up to him and was like, "Hi, I'm Amy Schumer. I have a show on cable. Can I send you a script?" And he was, I think in a very Paul Giamatti-like way, was like, "Oh, okay, maybe." And gave her his email and then apologized for how long his email address was. And then he just agreed to do it. So that's how that happened.
Next question's right up here.
So I'm curious, some of the best skits that I enjoy most involve topical and really important moral questions. Specifically, the one that sticks out for me is the Friday Night Lights parody about rape.
Yeah.
And wondering how you balance, taking something that's really important to talk about, but making it really funny.
That is a really good question. That's one of my favorite sketches too. And that sketch was written by Christine Nangle, who's like just a really incredible writer. And she basically, when she pitched that idea, it was we were all obsessed with Friday Night Lights. We all love that show. I've watched the entire series twice. She pitched pretty close to what it ended up being. But that question of how can we write the sketch about rape culture, this was a question though that kind of pervaded everything that we did. This is being, I think, one of the more serious examples. How can we write something about something really serious and not just have it be funny, but not feel preachy? Because things feeling preachy to the audience is like the death of not just it being funny, but of anyone wanting to watch it. I don't want to be preached to either. And so I think that in that one, her original draft, the coach character who ended up being played by Josh Charles, who's amazing, became like a friend of the show and loves comedy. The coach character in her first draft was kind of weighing in more with the players. If you haven't seen the sketch, the players are kind of, he's new in town and discovers that his first rule for the team is so we're gonna try a new strategy this year. We're gonna do 2 a day, what's the word? That's not rehearsal. What do you do in sports? Practice. And then also we're gonna have no raping. And everyone's like, what? Raping's part of what we do. In the original sketch, the coach was a little more outraged by it and weighing in on it a little more on the nose. And Amy was like, I think he needs to kind of be reacting like this is anything that the players are doing that would annoy him, because it's gonna kind of speak for itself. And it made a huge difference, I think, in how the sketch played out. We were always really trying to not overhit a point.
This will be our last question down in front.
Hi. Can you tell me about the SNL experience, and if there was anything, it seems like the genre of writing for that show would be very different than perhaps the book and the Amy Schumer experience. So tell me about that, and then what would be a main takeaway from that experience?
I wrote for SNL for one very undistinguished season, and I grew up worshiping that show. It was one of the reasons I wanted to be a comedy writer. I kind of thought I was like, maybe one day I'll be on that show. I just was obsessed with it. And by the time I got that job, I was a little bit older than most people are when they start writing for it. I want to say 33 or 34. And a lot of people, when they start to write for it, are like in their early 20s or right out of college. It did not agree with me for a variety of reasons. One of which was like quite simply like the hours. You kind of have to live there and you stay up all night, and I didn't realize how tired I already was at 33 and 34. I was just like, oh, I don't have the stamina for this. And also, and there's so many lovely people there. I did not thrive. It's not backstabbing in the way that you hear people talk about maybe the way it used to be. Everyone's mostly lovely and supportive, but it is a very small piece of real estate per week, and there's, including the cast, like 35 writers. So there is kind of an inherent competition just to get something on this real estate that you have of like less than an hour, really. I didn't like the competition aspect of it. The way we work on Schumer was very collaboratively. Things I would encourage people, I and Amy and our other executive producer, Dan Powell, really were into this idea of people bringing things to the table that were less than half-baked, like fragments of ideas. That's very different than how things are done at SNL. Yeah, I kind of feel like I like working in a way that is more using conversation as a tool for everyone to kind of figure things out together. And I had a really hard time at SNL. But other people who I adore and respect really thrive there. It just didn't, it did not do that for me. But I learned a ton, and I was really honored that I got to do it. I'm really glad I did it.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
so much, Jessi.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Chris.